Ask away. Okay.
No, it says. Do you remember? You remember the question?
Those the extra words at the end. Remember those? They didn't fit in with the.
No, there's something was talking. We were talking about how.
Said how the evolution live spear, how can it be caused by the seichel, by the if evolution liber is in the heart and it's superior to the seichel, we said. So how can it be caused? It says there that it's caused by the
dibur. The coil. The coil me'oirer hakavona.
And the kavanah is a rus of the liba. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you asked, how is a Rusa de Liba brought about by the Seichel? Maybe I think I recall that question. How is the Seichel, how is his bonus in Seichel, or even speaking the Seichel, explaining the Seichel, how is that bring about the Isarusa de Liba?
right.
Seiros Aleph.
Right.
Says Aleph is not Seichel.
It's superior.
It's superior to Seichel.
No, because in the dibur, the seichel is that's what's magal in the dibur, the imika seichel, and through that you are causing an erusadili, which is.
It's Arusa de, yeah. Right. the Indian we will see later on. People will understand what's the power in dibur. But essentially, briefly, we already touched upon it. We have to understand the following principle. Seichel is a structured thought process. Seichel means that you develop an idea in a structured way. It makes sense. A followed by B, B followed by C, and you see you show the logical sequence, how they interrelated. And ultimately, this entire structure of the seichel represents one thought. Like if you want to explain something, it takes you many sentences to explain. But what are you trying to explain? Not the individual sentences, not the individual rungs and steps in the seichel. You want to explain the central point that you have in mind to explain, and you need all of the means, all of the steps to explain it. The thought itself, this concept itself, this is what's called the essence of the seichel. And this essence of the seichel contains two aspects. The two aspects can be called oir v'keli. The keli is the fact that I understand it. The keli is the form of the seichel. Every seichel that we think of has a certain form. The oir is a totally different Indian. What is the oir? Okay.
This thought represents the essence of the seichel?
Sorry?
You said this collective thought, which puts all the sequences together, that's what represents the
essence of the seichel that you have in mind to bring out.
Of that essence.
Right. And in this essence, there are two parts.
That is the seichel. I'm just ordering by the essence. That is the...
No, the logical format, that's only a means to express the essence of the seichel. Like, did you ever experience where you're being explained a certain idea over and over again and says, oh, I got it. What did you get? You understood all the logical steps all the time. So what do you mean by I got the point? because all these logical steps were not meant for themselves. They were meant to bring out a point. And when you got the point, everything falls into place. And you realize that it's not the steps that were intended to be explained, but you realize that this essence, the point, is what the whole thing was all about. And now I want to examine the point, to examine the seichel itself. Because of your question, I want to examine the seichel itself. Now, as I said, in seichel there is oir v'keli. I'm not going very deep, very far into it, but I just want to discuss briefly these two aspects, oir and keli. Keli, just like if you have a cup that's filled with water. The cup is the keli, and the water is the oil, or that which the keli contains. Okay. Now, for a more direct understanding, what I want to say, let's say we put the keli inside a big basin. There's a basin or a lake of water, and you put the cup inside the lake. Now, the lake is full of water. Now the cup also is full of water. But the cup demarcates a certain amount of water that is now in the cup. And it demarcates it to such an extent that if you want, you can actually take the cup out, separate the water that's in the cup from the rest of the water. Okay? So the water that's in the cup, let's go at the time when it is still in the water, in the lake. It's the same water that's in the lake. It's connected completely. The reason there is water in the cup is not because there is water in cup. See if you can follow this. It's not that there is water in cup. It's that the cup is in the lake. That's why there is water in the cup. In other words, because you're relating to the whole presence of water, or in the nimshal would be to the whole truth. This is why there is the seichel there. It's not because you have in the cup water, but the cup is in you. The cup is in the water. That's why there is water in the cup. In the nimshal, it would be the reason that there is seichel, that you understand seichel, is because you are now connected to the whole truth, and that's why there is seichel. That's why you see something. That's why you recognize something. Then there is the moment when you take the cup out of the water. When you take the cup out of the water, it's the same water that was there before, connected to the lake. But now you have the demarcation lines of this water has been so clearly defined that you can even take it out and separate it, and you still have water. Which means now the same water that was there, now you can have it outside because you have a keli for it. You have a means of holding onto it. Because you have a means of holding onto it, that's why you can take it out from the source, separate it from the source, and have it. Okay. But even after it is separated, you have to recognize that this is the same water that was in the lake. It's not a different water, except that it has a form and it is out in a keli, so you can even examine it outside of its source. But essentially, it is. You have to, this is the same water. It's clean. It's pure. It's the same source. But I can examine it separately. One second. Let me just. I'm not even finished. So, in this water, it's in the cup. Here we can see there are these two inyanim. On one hand, this is water in the cup. On the other hand, the real point of this is that this is water from the lake. Not just water that was created in the cup. You understand the analogy here? It's water from the lake. It's still related to the source. This thing that it's related to the source, okay, let's say in human thought, you say, okay, take some water, drink it up. But if I drink it, I'm not going to have any more water. Don't worry, there's more where this came from. What does that mean? There's more because while you're drinking, you recognize that this is not just an isolated bit of water. There's more where this came from. Because it has a source. This source represents the source of water, and it gives you much. In terms of us drinking, for instance, we drink with much greater ease and satisfaction, knowing that this is not the last cup of water on the earth. There is more where this came from. In other words, there's a truth. There is a fact that water is created in the world. It's always going to be there. In the Nimshal, this is clearly a very mundane motion, but it's accurate if you kind of analyze it. In the Seichel, it's the same thing. When we understand the Seichel, it's like water in the cup. We have a keli, we have a form for the Seichel. We understand it clearly, we can define it and describe it with its limits. But deep down in our mind, we recognize there's a spark. So there's a spark to the Seichel. This is what I get it. There's a spark to the Seichel. This spark, this is the oir that says that this Seichel is not an isolated point. It's a point that connects to a source and represents a truth, and a general truth. Because of the general truth, this is why this Seichel is true. It is true not by itself, it is true because there is a source where this is coming from. Do I have you with me so far?
Yeah, the cup, you said, is this muscle representing the essence of the seichel?
Right.
Or the cup is the logical process?
The cup is the seichel in the keli. Not the logical seichel. The seichel in the keli, you have water in a cup.
Okay.
And it's real water. It's water that comes from the lake. But the meaning of this water is not that it's just water in a cup, but that this water is connected and comes from a source.
So the water is the essence, right?
Right, is the oil.
And the cup is
The keli.
And the keli is the process how you get to the essence.
No. No. When you go through a process and you get to the essence, like we say, giving the illustration that you get the point. When you get the point has two parts to it. An oil and a keli. The keli is the form by which you grasp it and you get the point. And the oil is that aspect of the seichel that tells you that this seichel has an essence greater than seichel, it has a truth, has a source where it's coming from. That's the oil. Just like oil, light, by definition, is that something that emanates from a source. It's not a separate mitzias. Emanates from a source, and that is the real quality of oil. So too in the seichel there is oil haseichel. The oil haseichel means that yes, you recognize the seichel, but you know that there is a truth beyond that, which is the source of the seichel, which makes the seichel true. So I go a step further. I want to connect it to your question. The seichel itself is sichli. No matter how much you take in the seichel, how much you understand the seichel, it's all sichli. This sense of its connection to the source, that we cannot get in the seichel. But that we have in Rusa Deliba. This is how seichel opens up the Rusa Deliba. The kavod. Another way of expressing this, perhaps simpler. This one made out he's making the notes.
I won't write it down so we're here, but it says that through speech, you magala the emek and pnimis seichel, and through this, you are drawing out the erusin deliba, which is higher than seichel. So it's still not clear. What is it that brings? How is it that seichel?
I'm explaining to you. This source of the seichel is not seichel at all.
The feeling of that it's connected to its source.
Right, and the source itself, the sense of the source is not seichel. The sense of the source is the source of seichel.
And that can be magala
And that is what the Rusa Deliba is.
That is what the Rusul is. That feeling of the source.
The feeling of the source we cannot grasp, we cannot relate to with seichel, but we can relate to in our heart. Let me.
That feeling of just like I got it. That's the Rusa Deliba feeling.
No, that's seichel.
I can't explain to you that feeling.
What?
That's not down to explanation. I can explain to you what I understood, but I can't explain to you that spark. You know
no, but you can't explain, but you have a clear view what it is. It's a seichel realization.
What that spark is?
Yeah, the seichel realization. Try to say. In this, I said there are two aspects. Let me give you the other way of looking at it, other thing that we can see in it, and it become even more clear. In every seichel, there are two stages. There's a stage where there are three stages. There's a stage where you understand the seichel because somebody explains it to you. While it's being explained, it makes sense, you understand it. But to yourself, you still don't have it. Then there's a stage where you understand it to yourself. Then there's a stage where you can even explain it to someone else. What are the differences in these three stages? The first stage, when you understand it because someone's explaining to you, you haven't gotten the spark of the seichel yet. This is when you understand the structure, how you get to the logical arguments that lead to the seichel. You didn't get the point yet. The second stage, when you get the point, this is when you have the seichel. I know what this is all about. I know what this is about. What he was talking about, and I can how actually reflect on it and think it through. Then there's a third stage where you can explain it to someone else. What is this third stage? And we know clearly that there is a gap between being able to understand it for yourself and being able to explain it to someone else. What is this gap? Why is there a gap? If you understand it, why can't you explain it to someone else? The gap is in the following aspect, the following point. This stage where you say, I understand it, why do you understand it? First of all, you heard it, you reflected on it, and you got the point. But along with that you got the point, there are other factors that come into it. The other factors are that the fact that you had previously learned different sichlim. You had previous exposure to these ideas. In other words, you understand the seichel, but the seichel is true only to you. It is not what's called universally true. You cannot pick it up and say, here it is. To me it makes sense because of my experience and because of the way my seichel works. I got the point. In other words, this is what's called a subjective truth. It's true to me. At that point, you say, okay, it's true to me, but you may think differently. And if, as long as it is only true to me, and I don't see it as a universal truth, I'm not going to undertake to explain it to you, because on what basis am I going to try to explain it to you? You don't have the same background. You don't think the same way as I do. So how am I going to explain to you the seichel that I understand? When I get to the next stage in the seichel, the next depth of the seichel, and I recognize that this is not a seichel that is true because my seichel understood it, but this seichel represents a truth that is true universally. And I got to this truth. I see how this seichel relates to this truth. In our morsel of the cup and water, in other words, it's not just water in the cup, but this is water from the lake. And everybody recognizes water in the lake. Then I can take you to the lake and say, here, this is water. Then I can explain it to someone else. At that point, by me, by the one who is clean, it's no longer a limited seichel. At that point, it is a truth, a fact. It's not just based on seichel, based on logical arguments. Okay, in our experience, it's like it's we spoke about this many times. Something that you have seen personally, or something in the physical world, or something that you are seeing currently, and you're describing to someone else, you can describe it perfectly. Because this is not something that has been formulated in your mind. It is a reality. I see it. I'm not describing to you what I formulated, the way I understood it. I'm telling you what I see. Once it becomes something which is in my memory, the way I understood it, then it's not clear anymore. Then I may remember it clearly, and if I remember it clearly, the way I see it, so as if I see it with my eyes. But if it's only, let's say, secondhand, if you heard it from me, then you don't have a clear picture of it. You just know certain points, but you don't have the reality of it. And it's secondhand to explain it is very difficult. You can repeat certain words, but you're not really describing the experience. Reusa de liba. Where does the heart wake up? The heart does not wake up to seichel. In order for the heart to wake up to seichel, you have to have hisbonenus and what's called the bechein, work directly on the heart and be misboinen in the bechein of the seichel, the Abba, Behir, and so forth. But when is the reusa de liba? When does the heart wake up automatically? When you recognize the truth itself. It's right in front of you. This is the truth of my life. This is not something which is good or bad. It's the truth of life. Then the heart wakes up. Because the heart does not relate to things logically. It feels the reality. It's either real or not real. If it's real, it wakes up. And when is it real? That's what he says. When the seichel and the coil, wherever it come on, when you have the coil, the pronouncing of the word says this is real. As long as it's in your thought, it's just in my thought. It's not making this reality statement.
So it's the fact that you're connected to the truth enough to express it, which awakens the heart.
Mm.
And the only way that you can describe the truth is through the Emek HaSeichel, which is Megal and Noisius.
The Oimeg HaSeichel becomes in Skala in Noisius, and this Oimeg HaSeichel connects to the, what's called Oimega Seichel means the essence, the very source of the Seichel. And that's where the heart wakes up. It's no longer Seichel, it's just a fact. It's a reality. Then the heart wakes up.
So can you match it up with your muscle?
I'm sorry?
Can you match it up with the muscle?
Yeah, well, I explained before. That this is like being able to explain it to someone else. Like in the case of like in the muscle of the cup of water, right? The cup of water. The water in the cup, you see the cup, and then I tell you this is water. Otherwise, you look at the water, yeah, it looks water, but I don't know where the water's come from, whether it's clean water or not, whether it's drinkable or not. You know what I'm saying? You don't know anything about it. You can't really relate to it. Somebody has to tell you, this is water from this lake. But if I take it to the lake itself, then you don't have any questions. Then that's it. This is it. This is the source of it. You don't need to be explained. You don't need to be told what this is.
So when you speak, in essence, you're bringing yourself to Rus Deliba? It's like going to the lake?
When you see, right, when you speak out, the oasis hat tefillah. Speaking out the oasis hat tefillah with the proper kavanah, with the proper intent, not just saying the words, and one word is jumping and breaking into the other, but saying the words properly with kavanah, and thinking the Pirush Hamilis even brings out the reality of what you say.
Without speaking it out, that's like water. It's like a subjective truth, which is
in your mind. It's in your mind. And you have to constantly tell yourself, what am I thinking about? Oh, I'm thinking about it. What am I thinking about? But when you say the words, you don't have to say, this is it. It's right here, the reality of it. And that is Ma'orer, that is Ma'orer, the Kavanas Allah. Want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Sure. What is this all about? We're trying to learn. I thought.
So that's literally the side question, really. So back to your motion of the cup, yeah. So when you take a cup out of a liquid water, it's when the concept is in your second when you say you got it, right? That's the thing.
Mm.
So over there is a challenge, right? Because you might think that water was created in your cycle. So you'll start thinking about that the concept is, it only makes sense because I'm so smart.
At that moment, no, you don't really, it doesn't really work that way. You think that in that moment you don't see the reality of it as real, besides the fact that I understand it.
Right.
You understand?
So why would you start feeling that you understand? Why do you want this connection to the reality of it? If it's in your seichel and you got it.
That's when you, because that's how the seichel doesn't stop there. I want to get to the truth of it.
That's a normal thing, yeah?
That's a normal thing. In other words, the seichel says, oh, you understand it. Then you say, why do I understand it? Why is it true? What makes it true? That's what Omega Seichel is. Omega Seichel is not, I understand it. In other words, okay, since I had a challenge to understand it, now I passed the challenge, and therefore I can go weiter. No, I want to grab it. I want to really know it. And that's when you go for the Omega Seichel.
Which part of the muscle is when you understand it, when the seichel is true to you, but it's not universal? This is when the cup is still in the lake?
No.
This is once you've taken it out before you bring somebody to the...
That's right. When the cup is still in the lake, you haven't understood it yet.
When it's
In our muscle.
Yeah, when it's in the cup out of the lake, you understand it, you can't describe it yet. You haven't come to the truth of it.
Right.
So become aware of the Omega Seichel when you read through Rus Deliba?
Well, it goes the other way. First you get to the Oimeg HaSeichel.
No, but by speaking, that makes you aware of its source.
Which is Oimeg HaSeichel.
So the roots of Liba brings upon to Oimeg HaSeichel.
No, but it goes the other way. In your Oimeg HaSeichel become recognized the source of the Seichel, and to that the heart wakes up. The heart. Excuse me?
That's the first step. I thought the speech eventually works in the heart.
No, the speech doesn't work directly on the heart. Everything has to come through the mind.
Right, obviously, but once you get to this, if you don't do the speech, then the heart will never get awakened.
That's right. But when you do the speech, that brings out in the mind, in the seichel, oimeg ha-seichel, and thus the heart wakes up to that.
Oh, okay, fine. So it's right. So the speech brings you to
Oimeg ha-seichel.
It brings you to, I don't say it right, but
Right.
it unlocks that area.
Right. He says right here, if we go 2 lines above where we pointed out where we're starting, right? V'atam b'chol zeh. Where's your book?
There is none. There's nowhere else.
Oh, come on. Okay, looking with him. You asked me the question, so looking with him over here. V'atam b'chol zeh. So never sit down without a book.
I know I have the book over here. I just have to find the place.
Oh, you have it right in English?
This is Hebrew and English. I just have to find where it is.
Oh. Let me see if I can find it for you. It's an old book. Well, this is all before. Oh, okay. Okay, here. Yeah, V'atam b'chol zeh. V'atam b'chol zeh. See, I'm going back a line because of the reason for all of this, the kavona and all that. Mashal, they had dibur davke meir u'mizgala oy pnimis v'oimeg ha-seichel. Because through dibur is mizgala de pnimis v'oimeg ha-seichel. Masheinu bo begilui be'iyun ha-machshava levad. That which does not express itself, doesn't come to expression through machshava alone. And this is why, including the union of Yusuf the Liba, the kavonas alev. Okay, let's see if we can go a little further. V'chein be'oirach v'roichav. Similarly, we were talking till now in terms of the oimeg haseichel, the pnimis and oimeg haseichel. Pnimis and oimeg haseichel means what is the essence? Why is this seichel make sense? Why is it true? Not just it makes sense to me. What's behind it? What is the source of it? What makes it so? What makes it true?
The same thing as we discussed previously when you mentioned this already in this word.
Yeah.
As much as concerned you. Is it still true, the definition, or is it different? Then you describe the word.
It depends where, it depends from what angle we're coming. Over here we're coming from the seichel angle. From the seichel, oimeg ha-seichel means the depth of the seichel, the source of the seichel. And the same thing, be'oirech v'roichav, the length, what's called oirech v'roichav, the length and breadth of the seichel. Or be'oifen gilui ha-seichel. And also the manner of the Gilui HaSeichel. How revealed, how clear is the Seichel? Sheba b'dibur b'ifim yoser na'al kanal. But when it comes in dibur, it's in a higher manner
So,
in every aspect.
so that just develops, the spark that you have. That just makes that bigger. Not that,
Right.
your subjective truth becomes broader.
That's right. Well, at first it is your subjective truth, and that you can explain it better and so forth. But ultimately, you have the oimek and pnimis haseichel, and that too can be elaborated on.
When it says Erech and Reichel, it's saying that the Eimek HaSeichel becomes bigger, or the first step.
The first step, the seichel itself.
The same stuff.
Yeah.
How can the Eimek HaSeichel become broader? I thought it's too divine, I guess, or too high to be down to separation of Erech and Reichel. The Eimek HaSeichel.
Right. The oimek haseichel is altogether not sichli.
Right. It's like
But it influences the seichel, and thereby the seichel becomes broad. V'chein b'midos, a similar inyan we find in midos. Shalidei hadibur dafke, that specifically and only through dibur nase ha hispoilus beyoser. Canal, the hispoilus, the excitement of the midah, becomes greater and stronger through expressing it in dibur. Oh, canal. Okay, so we finished, so to speak, describing the Milas HaSeichel. Now, what's behind it? Why is the Milas HaDibur? What's in this Dibur? Hatam b'chol zeh. The reason for all of this. What's the reason that Dibur has this powerful effect on the Seichel? Hu mitzad Malas HaDibur b'shorshoy. It is because of the fact that the dibur has a special quality in terms of its source. What does that mean? Let me explain in a minute. Shalamaylo gam mishoyresh umokir haseichel. The source of dibur is higher than even the source and the source of seichel. Let us speak briefly about what is meant by the shoyresh umokir. What is meant as shoyresh haseichel? Even though we already touched on it, shoyresh hadibur. We have to understand that when a person speaks, for instance, we say that a human being is called a medaber, right? He's called a medaber. What does it mean as a medaber? A person, dibur is a state, an activity. A person can be speaking and not speaking. When one is speaking, we could say, oh, now he is into himself, he is at ease, he is just the way he is to himself. When he is speaking, he is acting. He is active. So this activity, is this activity kind of superimposed upon him, meaning that he is not at ease with himself. He is doing it because he has to speak. But essentially, speaking is not a natural thing for him. Or do we say no? Speaking is a perfectly natural thing. He feels perfectly at home, comfortable speaking. He doesn't feel disturbed that he is doing something that's taking him out of his ease and personal calm. Even though a moment ago he wasn't speaking. If he wasn't speaking, now he's speaking, it seems that he's being disturbed. I'm just putting it in kind of a perspective. Why is it that he feels so comfortable with speech? Because the concept of speech is always with him. He is speaking, he is a speaking entity, not only when he speaks. When he is not speaking, he is also a speaking entity. The concept of speech is something which is his essence. Sometimes he exercises the actual activity of speech, sometimes he doesn't. But the essence that he is, speech is something which is perfectly natural to him. What is the state of speech when he is not speaking? It's in its source. It's in its essence. The essence is there all the time. This is true about speech. And this is true essentially about every koyach. Seichel. When the person understands, he is actively pursuing a seichel, actively understanding. So you would say, okay, now he understands the senior. But just as we pointed out before, that in seichel there is a moment when you say, oh, I get it. What is this I get it? This I get it has the following significance. It means the following. There is a general sense of truth that a person has. Understanding a seichel means understanding a certain specific aspect, specific statement. When you say, I get it, it means that I found the relationship between this specific seichel and the general sense of truth that I always have. The experience that we have in this comes out like this. We learn all new things all the time. And at the moment we really understand it, what happens when we understand it, we say, as long as we don't understand it, we're learning new things, adding on to our knowledge. When we really understand it, we say, oh, there's nothing new. I always thought like that. I always knew it. This means I always knew this truth, but I didn't really specifically know it. Really understanding means this was, it always made sense to me. I didn't even know that this had made sense, but it really did. Which shows that seichel has a source. That's what the mokira seichel. Just to illustrate the point, I mean, there's depth to this too, but the point is, everything has a mokir. If it didn't have a mokir in the essence, in the nefesh, then the effect of it would be that when he's involved in seichel, he is not himself. When he's involved in dibur, he is not himself. He is acting. He's overextended. He's out of his essence. And the fact is that a person can delve with him totally into the seichel and feel perfectly comfortable in it. Because seichel is him.
That's only when he gets the seichel. Not always.
When he gets a seichel that shows us that there is this essence. But the etzem inyan, the very inyan of thinking, of delving into something, is also has a source in it. It's not only when he gets it, we see it clearly.
Can I understand how without the intermediary of Rusa Deliva?
I'm sorry?
Can he come to Aimek HaSeichel without the intermediary of Rusa Deliva?
You're going back to this. Rusa Deliva is not the intermediary.
How do you-
Aimek HaSeichel is the intermediary
for the heart.
for the heart.
But I'm saying, but you said that you think, and then you come to level, then Rusa Deliva opens up the Aimek HaSeichel, and then the Seichel goes into the heart.
Then the Rusa Deliva, right, well, it responds to the essence of the seichel, not to the sichli.
Right, so I'm saying, so there's two parts of the seichel. There's a sichli part of the seichel, and there's the Aimek HaSeichel. And you said the way you get to the Aimek HaSeichel is through the Rusa Deliva.
No,
Through the speech, that's how you get to the deeper part of your mind.
that's right. And the Rusa Deliba responds to that.
Exactly. So I'm saying, so you need a Rusa Deliva to get to the deeper part of your seichel.
No,
So how do you get to the deeper part of your seichel?
just the opposite. You get to you get the sense of the Rusa Deliba in your seichel. In your seichel, you sense the deeper part of the seichel. And to this, and when you get that sense, Rusa Deliba responds. Why do you go back to this now?
Because I was asking a question about this, but yeah. So it's saying over here that you get to a point where you understand your mind, in your mind, where it's that truth that you knew that the whole time.
Right.
So I'm asking you, to get to that place, do you need to get to a place higher than your seichel to get to that, or is that within your seichel always?
This inyan that I always knew it. This is higher than seichel.
Right. So
This is like, so you can call it at this level like the moker seichel. This is what makes you able to understand things. There is higher than this, we're not going into identifying different madrigas, but you understand itself. That here you had a seichel before you even understood it. That means that this is the mocker. This is what makes it possible for you to understand.
is that the level where you can teach it to somebody else? Is that where, because you said there's the lower level where it's just for you, and the lower you can give to other people.
At that level, at that point, when you say, I always knew it, at that point you can teach it to somebody else.
Right. So
Because that means that this is part of the reality.
right. So
It's not just a seichel.
I'm saying you can get to that through your mind. You need something else to get to that depth. Correct?
You need somebody else.
To get to that under the seichel, you can't. Since it's higher than your seichel, you can't go through your seichel to get to it.
No, you do go to your seichel, but you go through this deeper hisbonenus, like there are different ways. One, he says, is deeper brings it out.
Right, but you don't go through the sichli. You don't go through the sichli to get to it.
Right, it's deeper than the seichel.
So I'm saying, so how do you get to it? Through deeper and hisbonenus are the same thing.
In his bonus, deeper in his bonus are not the same thing. But in, okay. After that you have sensed the Gilo Ir HaSeichel that comes out with Dibur, you can be misboinen in that. And let me explain to you, we are going off a little bit of the, but anyway, time is off anyway. In his boinanus, there are two types of his boinanus. There is a his boinanus hasichli, at the seichel thing, and then there is a his boinanus in the truth of it. What's called his boinanus in the alokus of the inyan. And this is what brings it to the depth of it. Okay, I just want to, before we turn off, I brought out the point. Every koyach has a shoyresh in the nefesh. And I illustrated the concept of the shoyresh in that even while when the koyach is not active, the inyan itself is still there in the person. But it's there in the shayrish level. Seichel has a shayrish, and dibur has a shayrish. And what we are saying is, dibur is rooted in the nefesh deeper than seichel. So that the inyan that we say, a person is a sichli, or a person is a medaber. When you say he's a sichli, you're describing a certain level in the nefesh. When you say that he's a medaber, you're describing a much more essential and deeper aspect of the nefesh. And this we'll take up in Mitchell next time. Yes, what is it?
He was saying that this point is broad that when you think, you only basically revealing what you always believe. And then, right? That's the idea of the same.
Only after you really understand.
Of course, I understand. But I'm saying, so he wrote it just as a proof that even when you don't think, you still have a control. Why? Because when you think, what you do is only to reveal what you always.
Ultimately,
I understand, but
that's right. That's right.
That's how it works.
Sure.
But
That which your nefesh doesn't understand, you will never understand.
right.
But there's nothing true that your nefesh doesn't understand. If it's a true thing, it's in there somewhere. It might be good. So,
Just 1 second, you interrupted me. Yeah? That's what the nefesh doesn't understand, you will never understand. That's what we were talking about.
No, I just want to ask you, when you started, you were saying that you were saying the person, even though he's not always speaking, right? But he's saying.
He is not always speaking, but he is still a speaking entity.
So you meant he's in Shoresh he's speaking entity. That's what you meant.
He's not necessarily speaking constantly, but he is speaking in a certain sense. He is a medaber. That defines, yeah.
Just like in Seichel, you might say
That's
he's
right.
not thinking, but just because even when he's thinking, he only reveals what he's really always before it comes out. That even when he's not talking, not thinking, he's also called thinking. So that's what you want to say, right? It doesn't mean that he is like in, for example, by speech. Even though you don't speak words, meaning you might think or something. You don't mean that.
No.
You meant in B'Shoresh.
B'Shoresh, he is always a medaber.
Right.
We will eventually try to identify what that means, but I just wanted to show that we see that things, every koyach exists b'shorshei. And when you describe the real entity of a person, you're describing it in the way it is in Sheresh, not what he's doing right now. A person is not called a medaber because he is speaking. When he's not speaking, he's not a medaber. No, he's always called a medaber.
What's the point of it? Why would you call somebody for what he could do and not for what he does?
No, not for what he could do, but for what he is by definition.
Oh.
The fact that he can do it, this is already a chitzonistic thing. The fact that this is the essence of his nefesh, that he's a medaber. And what does medaber mean? Essentially, just briefly, that he can recreate that which is in his mind, which is a totally superior koyach than even to know what's in your mind.
I have no idea what you're saying.
The koyach medaber is a totally different.
Say a second. I just want, if I understood it, you're saying that when you're presented with it like when you mean safely, when you're presented with something that you have to understand. The first level is to understand the mechanics of it, like the actual. But then the higher level, when you see that own thing in yourself, when you see that idea already it existed inside of your seichel, inside of the source of your seichel before. It was Bahalam, but before something.
You're really accepting it. You're really getting the point. That's when you really understand it.
But like you said, like it's already all in there.
Yes. Ultimately, When you fully, clearly understand it,
You find it in yourself.
you find that you've not learned anything new. You always knew it.
Because it was already there.
This is what's going to happen. When Mashiach will come and be Gilui Lakus, everyone's going to start pinching themselves. I always knew it. How come I was so blind to it? Because the reality of the world is known to us only by the fact that God is real to us. That's why the world is real. But we don't see it now. Now we think the world is real. When we will recognize the truth, we will see, hey, that's the same reality. But we realize this is a godly reality, isn't it? It's the same reality.
They're connected to that other thing that you just need to open your eyes.
Yeah, that's right. Open your eyes and you'll see. All you have to do is open your eyes.